We're hopefully going to be that, one-stop podcast where they know they're going to come on and hear real information, not just the fluffy surface chit-chat. It's actual real life scenarios and real life feelings and stories and experiences and solutions as well. Just a warning for anyone listening. This edition of our podcast makes mention of eating disorders and sexual abuse. If these issues are triggers for you in any way, we strongly suggest you skip past this episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lessons Podcast. I always say it every week, but I'm literally so excited for today's guest. But before we get into it, how's your week been, babe?
It has been full on this week. We have gone through many
big changes this week,
changes.
Actually.
We've just turned our lives upside down for the better.
It was literally on Friday. Steve was like, oh, look at this house that's for rent. We're exactly where we've always dreamt of living. And we went and looked at it yesterday at 2 p.m. By 4 p.m. we got the lease, put a house up for sale, and we're moving in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I love it.
So we've had a bit of a whirlwind week, and I was just saying to Steve, it's just been go, but it's all passion projects, so we're loving it. But today's guest is Lola Berry, and I absolutely love everything that she's about. She's a nutritionist, she's a yogi, she's an author, and just an all-round inspiring woman that I think everyone that listens today is going to walk away feeling really empowered by her story and overall her lessons. So without further ado, hello Lola, welcome to our podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
We are super excited and really appreciate your time today. And I know we've got so many great things to talk about, but before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you live, and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a nutritionist, yogi. I've written a few books and I live in Melbourne currently. I'm just a bit of a goober when it comes to like health. And a bogan. Most people say like my accent's like really strong. So everyone's like, she's that bogan health person. But for me, I'm just like with health, I just think, look, share my story, hopefully share something that might inspire people, but I've got no rules. So what works for me may not work for you or the next person. So I think we kind of get a bit obsessed with health, whereas I think we kind of loosen the reins a bit and just try it all on and figure out what fits and works for us. That's kind of my, I guess, mindset around it. And plus like the yoga side is a bit hippie too.
So what made you get into the industry?
Oh my God, I was so unhealthy. I was a DJ. So I was like a party animal.
Lifestyle.
Yep.
Party animal, and I was I was a makeup artist and a kind of DJ, and I loved it, but I was pretty unhealthy. My favorite food was lamingtons and giant caramello koalas. And to this day, I'm like, the giant ones are still better than the little ones.
Yes, agree.
Totally right. And I was really unhealthy, and I was DJing, and I remember thinking, oh my God, this isn't my passion. It's fun, but it's not my passion. And I was dating my DJ teacher, of course, cliche. And I remembered thinking, oh, I want to feel good on the beach this summer. That we just started dating. And so I kind of put myself on this, I called it a summertime detox. It just meant cutting the crap basically and just eating really clean. And I lost 20 kilos, but that ended up being a byproduct. It was like, wow, I sleep better, my skin's better, I'm a nicer person. And that's how I fell into health. I realized that, oh my God, like when you look after yourself, you're a better version of you.
Yep.
And I suppose these days on social media, we jump onto pages and we have a quick scroll through, and if anyone was to jump on your page, it's bright, it's bubbly, it's happy, it's health, it's yoga. It looks, seamlessly perfect, which I hate when people say that to me because, you do try and share the ups and downs and the real side of things. But let's get right into your story and lesson. Now, I know that you are doing a lot these days, as you just mentioned, but it started from a heartbreak. You went to therapy, right? Mm-hmm. And you wanted some assistance to get through a heartbreak, which heartbreak is, a form of grief. It's so hard. Anyone that goes through heartbreak, I've got a couple of girlfriends going through divorce at the moment, and it's just horrific. It is really challenging. So you went there thinking, I really am reaching out for help, and that would have been really hard to do. Like I've spoken about this in a podcast before, that we all need to reach out for help more, and that it is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. So you went to therapy and you said, I'm heartbroken, I need some help me get me through this. But that was just the beginning of your journey. Can we dive deep into what happened in that session?
Totally. So I fell in love with this great guy. And
was this the DJ?
No, the DJ was long for this, but he he was really sweet, but he hadn't, and you guys, you're probably I think I'm a little bit older than you guys, but it takes a while to figure out who you are, right? So in your 20s and even early 30s, you're still learning who you are and what your value system is. And I was dating this guy and I was like, shit, like our values are very out of a line here and our languages of love were very different. And so it was very hard to communicate. And I remember it was getting to this phase where I was really doubting myself. So I was like, oh, he's not with me because I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. You know, I'm not skinny enough, all that kind of negative self-talk stuff. And I was like, shit, I've got to get to a therapist and sort this out, because it was the same lesson. It was like I'd date someone for a bit, I'd get insecure about myself and blame often their shit on myself. And so I went to the therapist and I was like, what am I doing wrong? And he's like, first of all, you need to stop dating narcissists. He's like, you're going through this similar pattern over and over. And he said, and we need to work on your self-worth. And he said, my goal for you is to help make you bulletproof. And I was like, okay, you're speaking my language here. And my therapist trained Sam Solomon, a fighter, and he looks after kind of like dudes that are investing a lot of money, like that business. It's almost more, I don't know how to call it. It's more almost life coachy. And he said, if you want to live your dreams, he's like, you can't be having this kind of self-doubt, low self-belief, all that jazz. And he goes, let's get you bulletproof. And he said, you need to face the shit. He's like, you don't even like who you are, number one. He's like, you're preaching health and you've got this really disordered relationship with food and self-worth. And he's like, you're not even living the truth. And I'm like, I know, I feel like crap right now. And he was like, sit in it. And I see him every 2 weeks, every week, depending on if I need it or not, if I've got something coming up I'm feeling anxious about. And to be completely honest with you, it's an ongoing process and it's now my non-negotiable.
For sure. And when you went in there thinking it was about heartbreak, I have read a little bit about you and listened to some things with you. Depression, anxiety, eating disorders. Let's dive right into how you found out you were going through all of that and what you did to get out of it.
I think when we're unhappy in some area of our life, we generally like to self-medicate in some way. And everybody's got a different coping mechanism. It can be alcohol, it can be sex, it can be food. Yeah. For me, it was giant caramello koalas. And so I was learning that I was using food as a way of self-medicating my unhappiness and my low self-worth. And it was kind of like so that I wouldn't feel the pain. And he was like, he taught me this word, it's called numberlayer, and it's an Indigenous Australian word, and it means to live free of fear. And he's like, we need you to stop fearing like being alone or fearing not being loved. And we need you to sit in it. And you work through, like, he's a hypnotherapist as well. So we would work through like past stuff, and you literally let so much crap go. But absolutely there were times when I was like, I'd eat nothing, like fast on water for 10 days straight. And then I'd binge for like 3 days straight. And it's like it's so horrible. And it's total like a self loathing. Like it's a very, my boyfriend now talks about, he used to be a smoker, and he's like, it's literally like you literally hate yourself. And it's the same feeling when you're medicating with food, because you don't want to be eating bad food, but it's just this like bizarre kind of medication and addiction. So we've worked a lot on like why I've felt the sadness and anxiety. And I had a panic attack earlier this year, and I didn't even realize I was having it. I thought I was having a heart attack. If anyone's had a panic attack, you think you're like, oh, get me in hospital, I'm having a heart attack. And it was actually because I got booked for this speaking gig, and I know I can say this, and this is a very safe space to say this. There are a lot of people in the health industry world that are fake.
Yes.
And I was on stage, and I was just in this situation. I could feel it just felt really fake and really selfish and famey. And I was like, oh, fuck, I got to get out of here. And I couldn't get out quick enough. And I remember I did a book signing after, and I thought I was going to faint, and I had to lean against the wall to sign the books. And I was like, I've got to get out. And that was when my therapist goes, congratulations, you've just had your first panic attack. And he goes, stop doing shit that you don't want to do anymore.
Learn to say no.
And living more authentically, I guess, as well, hey?
Yeah.
Living to your true self. And going back to the issues that you were having, did you go back to where it originally started? Did you ever find out through the practice of seeing your therapist. What was the original trigger that started the whole process of that eating pattern and also your depression?
Yeah, so it's a control thing. So mine started very young as a coping mechanism for sexual abuse. So it started very, very young, like 13 to 15. And then I got out of the situation that I was in, and it kind of didn't rear its head. The eating disorder didn't really rear its head again for like another 5 or 6 years. And then I just kind of controlled it. And it is an element of control. I controlled it for a fair few years, and it would just rear its head up kind of like when I was really stressed out, and it just became, but yeah, it was definitely a control mechanism for me. And then through the therapy, it became a learned behavior as well. So there was somebody in my life that was older than me that would emotionally eat when they'd pick me up from school. And I had no idea, but I was 12, even 11, and I was watching this person was looking after me binge, and I had no idea. And so through the therapy, I had totally blocked a lot of that out. I realized, yes, it was a coping mechanism, but it was also a learned behavior. So it's so fascinating when you get into the brain,
Yes.
and it's very empowering when you learn that it's not often your shit. Like, it's just like, oh, this is the way as a young kid that I had to handle this shit. And even with when I was going through a lot of the really tough couple of years with the sexual abuse, I had OCD as well, and I didn't realize until I looked back and I was like, shit, I had to do light switches like 5 times, all the stuff you laugh at, fold things a certain way. And it was, again, that because one element of your life is so out of control, you then want control.
Yes.
That makes so much sense.
Other areas, yeah.
Oh, I just had to take a few breaths because it's emotional to hear your story and what you went through at such a young age as a girl. I was even watching the news this morning, and it showed this abduction that happened in Kmart, and this teenager took this little girl, this 4-year-old little girl, down to the park, sexually assaulted and raped her, brought her back to the shopping centre, and her mum was still frantically looking for her. And I was on the treadmill this morning just tearing up. So even just hearing that, I was just like, oh. And I know so many challenging times in our life really do help shape us, and we get so many lessons out of it. And, you wouldn't be who you were if you didn't go through all of that. And I can see, and I can even just feel what a strong person you are. So overall, through everything that you've been through, from the sexual abuse, which, thank you for being so vulnerable to share that, because I know that's not easy, the depression, the anxiety, the food, what would be your overall biggest lesson that you would like to share with our audience?
So most people think I'm crazy when I say this. I don't regret anything that's happened to me.
Love that.
None of it.
We should be best friends. You need to move up to the Gold Coast.
Seriously though, because it gives you this, like, in yoga, we have this word called dharma, and it means to live on purpose. So it's like what you were put here to do. And I know you guys live to dharma. And I just think if I didn't go through that yuck stuff, I wouldn't probably have the guts to live to purpose and live to dharma and to do what I love, no matter what other people think. I know you guys know this, like, it's fucking hard to chase a dream and to risk it all. And, you're the only one that can believe in this weird little dream that you have, kind of thing. And it's, I think having that kind of like tricky childhood meant that, I felt obviously very alone and depressed at times, but coming through that as an adult, I'm like, this has given me, like, I'm very comfortable being vulnerable. It's given me strength. I actually give a shit about who I am now. Like, it gives you this almost like superpower to be like, I know who I am and I'm not ashamed of who I am.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So would you say that a big lesson too is just reach out for help? Like, you don't have to go through life alone, right?
Oh, big time. I say to most people now, and this was a turning point, now when I do speaking gigs, I'm like, can I not talk about gut health today? Can I talk about the importance of having a therapist? And they're like, what? I think it's so important. I think especially with the social media world, and if you've got a career where social media is a part of your world, far out. Like, it's weird. You're literally doing deals based on how many likes something gets.
Yes.
Like, that's a weird way to, have validation. So, you need help to unpack that, like, just even on a surface level. So my rule is, like, at some stage of your life, you will probably do well to have a therapist or life coach, or Like even there's some days where I see my therapist and it's a whole like business coaching, you know, lesson. I'll be like, I want to sell this business. I want to start this. And he's like, great, let's talk about it. Let's do it. So I think it can be so many different things, but it's, to me, it is 100% a non-negotiable. Think about it like you're on the treadmill this morning. We move our body. We go to the gym. We eat healthy food. What about our brain? What about gym for our brain?
And we agree too, like we have a relationship coach, and we spoke about this in a previous lessons podcast. And, you know, even to people around us, when I say that we've got a relationship coach, their automatic reaction is, oh, what's wrong? It's like, well, nothing's actually wrong. We're actually growing and learning so much about each other. And who I was at 20 when I met Steve to who I am as a 30-year-old woman is I'm a new person. You know, we've got so much to learn and navigate through. And there is times where there's crisis, and there is times where we need almost immediate. And we started out with our relationship coach at a crisis. We need help. Like, we're breaking down. What's going to happen? And now we see him like at least once a month. And it's just like part of our life. It would feel weird not to have that coaching. Like I would feel like something's missing. I crave it and I need that growth. And I just think it's so important individually and as a couple, in business and health, to go to the experts and to go to people that can help you step up in life.
It just makes the path so much easier. It takes away, you can get to A to B a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, whatever that.
And it can be more enjoyable.
Yeah, for sure. And it cuts down that time of feeling unsure or alone or confused.
And I love that you're talking about it, we're talking about it. The more people that talk about getting help, the less taboo it is, and the more it gives everyone permission to go, hey, yeah, I'm going to put my hand up. I'm not okay. Can I get some help, instead of going through that alone? And with social media, like you said, this day and age, social media can be scary for our younger generation, and they're comparing constantly. They're getting bullied constantly. And if we make it so okay to ask for help, I feel like the suicide rate will go down, the depression rate will go down, the isolation will go down, and we can talk about these conversations more. So
yeah, one of the things I feel like stress, I mean, you talked about before about health, your health seminars and chats that you talk about gut health, etc. But like stress has to be one of the most detrimental things ever to a human
So true.
well-being, and whether it's longevity or just living a healthy, happy life, that holding on to emotions is the worst thing you can do.
So
like
true.
the worst thing you can do is
healing.
internalize and just let it sit there or block it down. And the biggest thing I've learned out of coaching myself is really getting that out and talking to someone and processing it properly. Because you're going to deal with that emotion one way or the other.
Positively or negatively. Yeah.
And it's going to sit there and fester and show up. And I truly believe that it shows up in many forms. It can show up in disease. It can show up in
relationship breakdown,
ailments, all sorts of ways. So it is a really and the ones that I see that do it really well are generally happy, easygoing people. And it doesn't mean that you're a negative person if you're getting your talking, but there's a way to do it. And the positive way is talking to someone that you can trust, and just that you can turn around a negative emotion in an instant. And that's the one thing we've really worked on hard is whether it's in our relationship, having a fight, we can solve that issue straight away if we choose to, or we can sit there and fester and be stubborn and not talk about it, shove it on the rug, and then that turns into something totally different, and it
will come out later on,
and it will come out.
And like you said, if you don't deal with it by getting therapy or getting help or talking through and communicating, you will numb it, or it will come out in a negative way, whether it is through sex, alcohol, drugs, food, being a troll, whatever way you need to deal with it, it will come out in that negative way if you don't heal it.
Totally. But I think also what you've just said as well, like people don't realize that the people who've kind of got their shit together have generally got a therapist or someone helping them. The people that are really successful or doing really well, they've got someone in their corner going, listen, let's like, that is a professional that knows what I remember, I was, this is about a year and a half ago, I was on like early dating someone. I've been dating for a few weeks, and I said, I want you to know I've got a therapist. And I just watch his face like glaze over, like, you know, like, oh, she's fucked up. And I was like, I'll probably never see this guy again. Like in my head, I'm just like, we're so on different alignment. And my boyfriend now, I remember on our second date, I said, I want to tell you I've got a therapist. And he goes, I find that so attractive.
Aww.
And I think it's that, and like just hearing you guys as well, like having someone with a relationship, that's the magic ingredient that really is like the glue. Like it keeps you accountable. It keeps you, I think people don't realize, like, in order to grow, you got to sit in the shit. Like you've got to learn 100%. From it. You got to sit in it. You got to be like, fuck, this actually feels a little uncomfortable right now. Yeah. Yep. But I think what you've just said is perfect, because if we can, I think there's a movement where everyone's like, yes, I've had this happen to me. Yes, I've had this mental health thing happen, but not too many people talk about, hang on a minute, I do get help for it.
Yeah.
And so I think the more people that know, yes, having a therapist is like having a trainer, is like, you know, having a yoga teacher or having a nutritionist, whatever it is. It's just one of those things that you do if you want to be the best you can be.
So one of your, you were talking about you being depressed, and did you ever think about medicating it at the time when you were depression, and do you, now that you've got a therapist, have you changed your mind about that?
Yeah, definitely. So a fair few friends said that I should think about medication. I was always, because the eating disorder was still so heavily rooted within me, I didn't want to, because the side effect of like SSRIs is weight gain. And so I was always very afraid of, I was like, I remember saying to someone, I'd rather be sad and small than fatter and I remember being had such a fear around putting weight on. And obviously that was half the friggin' issue. Yeah. But as far as medication went down, I was pretty adamant. I think also by then I'd started studying my degree. So I was very into understanding the brain. I was so fascinated by neurochemistry. And so I was like, I think that there are other ways for me personally to go down the path rather than medication. The other cool thing is if you've got an amazing naturopath or nutritionist and they are qualified and trained, there are so many fascinating amino acids and herbs that can be used to work on serotonin or dopamine, depending on what your brain neurochemistry is doing. I find it so fascinating.
100%.
But for me personally, no, I didn't medicate. My opinion on medication now, though, is it does work for some people. It doesn't work for some people. And I think if you were going to medicate, you'd want to do it with a practitioner that just knows their shit. And for me, I'd be inclined to go down like in here, there's these great, I forgot what they're called, but they're like a naturopath and a doctor. Is it functional doctors? And so you can go, hey, I want to go on the medication for a certain amount of time. I don't want this to be my forever plan. The really dangerous thing with like SSRIs is you can't wake up one morning and go, I feel great, I'm not going to take my medicine. Yeah. Like it's really, really dangerous. Like so yeah, and you have to taper off over months. Yeah. So I just say work in synergy with a naturopath or nutritionist and a doctor if you're ever to go down that path. But there is so much amazing stuff. My boyfriend suffers from severe anxiety, like proper panic attacks. And he has gone totally down the natural pathway, naturopath, hypnotherapist, therapist, the works, and he's got really good results. But it takes a bit longer naturally.
There is other options. That's what I advise too. There's options for everyone, and what works for one person might not work for the next, but it's up to the individual to explore those options and just really research and talk to people and decide what's best for you at that time. And what work might be good for you for the first couple of months, you might change your mind in a couple of months and look at a different route. So good to be open.
Totally. And same goes for therapists. I think a lot of people see one therapist once and be like, nope, I hated them. Yeah. They didn't understand me. I'm never seeing a therapist again. I'm like, you got to give it 4 sessions. You've got to see if that's not the right fit, try another one. It took me 2 years to find one that I just gelled with.
Yep.
I love that you said that actually, because last year when I was going through a really deep, dark place, there was a lot of online hate, and I had a personal assistant at the time, and she was like, that's it, we're going to book you into a therapist. And I went to 4 different ones, and bless them, but they were older, and they said, oh, so what is Snapchat, and what do you mean Instagram?
Oh, yeah.
What's a forum? And can't you just block and delete them and then not look at them? I was like, oh God, I wish it was that easy. And that's when I found 2 life coaches who were very heavily involved in social media and had just got it. And it took, you know, a lot of money and time and explaining the whole situation. But I'm so glad I didn't give up after those ones and go, oh, well, therapy's not for me. It's just finding the right person that you click with.
Totally. That's so important. And I think that that's one of the main things that puts people off getting a therapist, because they're like, or finding a therapist because they're like, this is too hard. They're not going to understand me. Because remember, you see a therapist, normally the first session is you just laying it on the line, which is
crying.
Yeah, you feel pretty vulnerable. You feel pretty shit about yourself sometimes. So having to go over that 4 times is like, are you for real? So
draining.
I can understand it, but it's definitely worth it when you find the right one.
I think the word therapist is probably taboo. I like to call it coach. Yeah, because I've got a tennis coach. I've got a personal coach, PT, which is a coach. So it's just another area of coaching, isn't it? I mean,
it makes it sound lighter, doesn't it?
Therapists, can have that.
My therapist calls it coach. He says, tell people I coach you. And I'm like, can I say you're my guru? And he's like, no.
Oh, this has been absolutely awesome. And I really, really just respect how vulnerable and open you are, because I just think we all need more authenticity and realness, because it's the most connecting thing and it helps us not feel alone when we are going through those really tough times. So thank you so much for being so open. I wish we could talk to you a lot more, and hopefully we can have you on the podcast as another guest, as another chat one day, because you are just full of energy and light and inspiration. So thank you so much for joining us.
And is there somewhere our followers and listeners can find you? Where would be the best place?
I've just got my website and Insta. I'm Yummo Lola Berry, literally like you could eat the food, of course. Classic goober. But I'm around.
You'll find me. We'll put all your details below and we'll make sure we put a post up on our Lessons Podcast Instagram so you can read all the feedback, because I just know everyone's going to absolutely love this. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. It was awesome.
Thanks for listening, guys. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Lessons Podcast. And remember, we'd love to hear from you. So please jump on over to our Lessons Podcast Insta page to tell us what you think. Don't forget to join us on the Lessons Podcast next week for another inspiring guest and fantastic life lesson. If you think you've got a lesson to share, we'd love to hear from you. Hit the link in the description box to get in touch. Bye! If you need help or support for an eating disorder or body image issues, please call the Butterflies Foundation's National Helpline on 1-800-334-673 or email support@thebutterflyfoundation.org.au. For adults recovering from childhood trauma, call the Blue Knot Foundation Helpline on 1300 657 380 or go to www.blueknot.org.au.